Book 10. Night in the Camp. A Foray. They slept then, all the rest, along the shipways, captains of Achaean, overcome night-long by slumber. But their high commander, Agamemnon, lay beyond sweet sleep, and cast about in tumult of the mind. As when the lord of fair-haired Hera flashes, bringing on giant storms of rain or hail, or wintry blizzards sifting on grey fields, or the wide jaws of drear and bitter war, so thick and fast the groans of Agamemnon came from his heart's core, and his very entrails shook with groaning. Aye, when he looked out in wonder and dismay upon the plain where fires burned a myriad before Troy, and heard flute sounds and pipes, nocturnal hum of men encamped there, when he looked again at his Achaeans and their ships before high Zeus, he tore his hair out by the roots, and groaned from the well of his great heart. But this expedient came into his mind: to visit Nestor, first of all, and see what plan, if any, could be formed with him, some well-wrought plan that might avoid the worst for the Danaans. And rising, he pulled his tunic on over his ribs and tied his smooth feet into good rawhide sandals, took a great tawny lion-skin for mantle, dangling to his heels, and gripped a spear. Now Menelaus, like his brother, shaken lay unsleeping, open-eyed, foreboding anguish for the Argives, who had come for his sake many a long sea-mile to Troy to wage the daring war. He rose and cloaked his broad back with a spotted leopard skin, picked up a bronze-rimmed helmet for his head, and took a long spear in his fist to go arouse his brother, lord of all the Argives, whom as a god the common folk revered. He found him buckling on his handsome baldric close to the ship-stern, and he turned in joy to see Menelaus come. Then Menelaus, lord of the war-cry, said, "Why under arms, dear brother? Will you call for a volunteer to look the Trojans over? Hardly one will take that duty on, I fear, alone to circle and scout the dangerous enemy in the starry night. It will take nerve to do it." Agamemnon answered, "You and I must have some plan of action, Menelaus, and a good one too. Some plan to keep the troops and ships from ruin. Zeus's mood has changed. He cares for Hector's offerings more than ours. In my lifetime I have not seen or heard of one man doing in a day's action what Hector did to the Achaean army. One man, son of neither god nor goddess, in one day's action. But for years to come that havoc will be felt among the Argives. Go now. Wake Idomeneus and Ajax. Go on the run along the ships, and I will turn out Nestor if he'll come to join us at the first sentry post and give commands. He is the one they should most willingly obey. His own son heads a company with Idomeneus' lieutenant Meriones. We put the sentries mainly in their charge." Said Menelaus in reply, "But how do you intend this order? Am I to stay with those two, waiting till you come, or track you on the run after I tell them?" The Lord Marshal Agamemnon answered, "Stay in their company. We might not meet coming and going. There are many paths through the encampment. When you go, speak out. Tell them to rouse themselves, but courteously, giving each man his patronymic and his rank, and do not feel it is beneath you. We must do service too. That is the way the Lord Zeus burdened us when we were born." With these words, making clear what he commanded, he sent his brother off, while he himself went on toward Nestor. Close to his hut and ship he found him in a bed of fleece. Nearby his glinting arms were lying, a round shield, 2 lances, and a helmet burnished bright. There lay his many-faceted kilt or loin-guard, girded on when the old man armed for war, to take his soldiers forward, undeterred by doleful age. He heaved up on his elbow, lifting his head, and peering in the dark, he asked, "Who are you, going about alone amid the host by night when others sleep? Looking for some stray mule or some companion? Speak, don't stand there silent, what do you want?" Then the Lord Marshal Agamemnon answered, "Nestor, son of Neleus, pride of Achaeans, know me for Agamemnon, son of Atreus, plunged by Zeus into the worst trouble a man could know. For as long as I draw breath, as long as my own legs will carry me. I roam this way because no sleep will come to settle on my eyes. The war stays with me, and what the army suffers. How I fear for our Achaeans. Quietude of heart I have none. Fever of dread is in my brain. My heart leaps from my ribs. My knees give way. If you will act, and even you are sleepless, let us inspect the sentries and make sure they are not drugged by weariness, not lying asleep, their duty all forgotten. Hard enemies are encamped nearby. We cannot say for sure they'll not attack by night." Earl Nestor of Gerenia answered, "Lord Marshal of the army, Agamemnon, Zeus the Profound will not achieve for Hector all that the man imagines now or hopes for. I think he too will have his difficulties, and more, if ever Achilles drops his anger. But I will come with you, and gladly. Why not awaken others to join us? Diomedes, who is a wonder with a spear, Odysseus, and Ajax the fast one, and the son of Phyleus. Someone might go as well and waken Ajax the tall one, and Idomeneus. Their ships are not so near, any of them. Moreover, dear and respected as your brother is, I have hard words for him. You may resent it. I will not hide it. See the way he sleeps and leaves the toil and worry to you alone. He should be up and asking help of all our noblest, now the inexorable need has come upon us." The Lord Marshal said, "Sir, I should say, accuse him another time. He often does go easy and holds off, not out of laziness or lightness of mind, but following my lead, deferring to me. This time, though, he was the first to rise and came to me. I sent him off to summon the very men you name. Let us go on. We'll come across them at the sentry post outside the gates. All were to gather there." Earl Nestor of Gerenia replied, "No Argive then can take it ill. No one will disregard him when he calls to action." With this he pulled his tunic to his waist, tied his smooth feet into good rawhide sandals, and gathered round him with a brooch his great red double mantle lined with fleece. He picked a tough spear capped with whetted bronze, and made his way along the Achaean ships. Coming first on Odysseus, peer of Zeus in stratagems, he gave a call to wake him. Clear in the sleeper's shrouded mind it rang, and he burst, startled, from his hut to ask, "Why are you out wandering through the army, you alone in the starry night? What brings you?" Earl Nestor of Gerenia replied, "Son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, do not be vexed at this. The Achaeans' peril warrants it. Now come along with us, and we shall find another man to waken, someone fit to advise retreat or war." The great tactician stepped inside and picked a painted shield to hang from his broad shoulders. Then he went after them. The next in line was Diomedes, and outside his hut they found him with his gear of war. Around him his men were sleeping, pillowed on their shields, with spears driven upright, butt spikes in the ground. Point after point of bronze reflecting light into the distance, like a glare of lightning flung by Father Zeus. But the hero slept, a bull's hide spread beneath him, and a bright unfolded rug beneath his head. Beside him Nestor of Gerenia took his stand, and jogged him with his foot, then lectured him. "Up, get up, Diomedes. Will you snore the whole night through? Do you not know the Trojans have taken up positions near the ships where the beach rises, only a stone's throw off?" At this the hero, starting up from sleep, gave back a rough reply. "Hard as a knife is what you are, old man. By night and day you never rest. Are there no younger men who might go round about to wake the captains one by one? Can no one hold you down?" Then Nestor said, "No doubt of it, dear lad. There's reason in what you say. I have indeed able young sons and soldiers, many of them, any of whom could go and bear the summons. Terrible pressure is upon us, though. The issue teeters on a razor's edge for all Achaeans, whether we live or perish. Go and rouse Meges, rouse Ajax the runner, if as a younger man you'd spare my age." Diomedes took for full-length cape the skin of a great tawny lion, picked a spear, and ran to rouse the others and conduct them. Filing out among the sentries then, they found that not one captain was asleep. Each man sat up, all wakeful, under arms. As shepherd dogs keep bristling watch, their ears pricked up at the approach of a wild beast, roaming down hills through woodland toward the fold. They hear an outcry far away of men and watchdogs, and their rest is at an end. So for these sentries rest had been dispelled as they kept watch on that bad night, forever facing the plain, peering when they could catch a sound of Trojans moving. And old Nestor, in his relief at seeing them, said heartily, "That is the way to keep your watch, dear lads. Sleep must not capture one of you, or all may well give cause for gloating to the enemy." He crossed the moat then, and the peers who came to attend the council followed him, as did Meriones and Nestor's son, whom they had asked to join them. Once across, they sat down in the clear, an open space not littered with dead bodies, the same place where Hector in his power had turned back from slaughtering Argives when the night came down and shrouded all. Here, then, they sat and talked, and first to speak was Nestor. "Friends," he said, Is there no man who trusts his own brave heart enough to make a foray on the Trojans, killing some isolated guard, perhaps, or picking up information, overhearing plans they exchange among themselves? Have they a mind to stay afield here by the ships, or to re-enter Troy since they defeated us? A man might learn these things and get away unhurt to join us, and his feat would be renowned among all people under heaven. A handsome prize will be awarded him. Every commander of a ship division gives him a black ewe with a suckling lamb. No token of honor like it. Afterward he can attend all feasts and drinking parties. Now at this challenge everyone grew still, but Diomedes in their midst spoke out. Nestor, pride and excitement urge me on to make a foray into the enemy camp so close at hand here. If some other soldier goes along, it will be better, though, more warmth to it. 2 men can make a team. One will catch on quicker than the other when there's a chance of bringing something off, while one man's eyes and wit may move more slowly. Volunteers aplenty desired to go with Diomedes. Ajax the tall, short Ajax, Meriones and the eager son of Nestor, the spearman Menelaus, then Odysseus, that rugged man, wished too to pierce the lines, bold for adventure as he always was. Now the Lord Marshal Agamemnon said, Diomedes, my own right arm, you name your own companion. Take the one you want, the best of those whose hands are up. You have plenty to choose from. No damned bashfulness that might incline you to pass by the strongest and take a lesser man through deference to birth or to rank higher than your own. He said this, fearing for his red-haired brother Menelaus. But Diomedes said, If this is a command, and I may choose, could I pass by that kingly man Odysseus, shrewd as he is and cool and brave beyond all others in rough work? Pallas Athena loves that man. If he were at my side, we'd go through fire and come back, the 2 of us. No man knows war as he does. Rejoined the Lord Odysseus, Diomedes, no good flattering me or carping either, not before men who know me through and through. We should be on our way. How the night passes, dawn is near, high stars have all gone down, 2/3 of night are gone, 1/3 is left us. Then both men buckled on grim gear of war. Diomedes was given by Thracimedes a 2-edged sword, for his own was at the ship, and a shield too. Upon his head he pulled a bull's hide helmet with no ridge or plume, a so-called cut-down made to guard the skulls of rugged men-at-arms. Meriones handed Odysseus his bow and quiver, gave him a 2-edged sword, and fitted on a helmet that was first a cap of hide, with bands of leather criss-crossed, and on these a boar's white teeth were thickly set, disposed with cunning on all sides. A felt lining padded the cap. This helm Autolycus brought in the old days out of Iliad, where he made a breach in the palace wall of Amintor, the son of Ormenus. He gave it to Amphidamas the Cytheran, Scandia-bound. Amphidamas, in return for hospitality, gave it to Molus, and Molus handed it on to his own son Meriones to wear in battle. Now it capped Odysseus's head. Grimly accoutred, the 2 moved out into the darkness, leaving all their peers behind. Off to the right, along their path, Pallas Athena sent a heron gliding down the night. They could not see it passing, but they heard its cry, and heartened by that fisher-bird, Odysseus prayed, O child of Zeus, who bears the storm cloud, hear me. In hard hours ever at my side you follow every move I make. Tonight befriend me most, Athena. Before we 2 retire on the ships, let us bring off some feat to gall the Trojans. In his turn, Diomedes, lord of the war-cry, prayed, O tireless one, hear me as well. Be with me as with Tydeus once, my father, when he advanced as messenger to Thebes, ahead of all Achaeans, left the Achaeans on the Asopus river under arms. His words to the Cadmeans were like honey, but terrible were the actions he devised as he withdrew, bright goddess, with your blessing. Now in the same way bless me, guard me now. For my part I shall offer at your altar a virgin heifer, a yearling, never yoked, her horns all sheathed in gold. These were their prayers, and Pallas Athena, Zeus's daughter, heard them. Falling silent after invoking her, they made their way like lions through black night, toward kills and carnage, braving spears and blood. Neither were Trojan leaders permitted sleep by Hector, but he called them all together, all who were lords and captains of the Trojans, to put his plan before them. Who volunteers to undertake this mission and see it through for a great prize? He will have satisfaction. A chariot and 2 mettlesome fine horses, best of those beside the Achaean ships, for the man who dares to win fame for himself by a night patrol along the ships, to learn if they are guarded as before. It may be the Achaeans were so battered by our charge that now they talk of sailing, and are so weary that now they have no will for a night watch. The listening Trojans all grew mute and still. Among them there was one by the name of Dolan, rich in gold and rich in bronze. This man was heir to the great herald called Diomedes, and a good runner, puny though he seemed, an only son with 5 sisters. He spoke before the Trojans in response to Hector. "Hector, pride and excitement urged me on to make this night patrol close to the ships for information. Only lift up your staff and swear that my reward will be that team and brazen car that bear the son of Peleus. For my part, I take oath not to be blind on this patrol or let you down. I'll make it straight through all the camp until I reach the ship of Agamemnon. There the Achaean captains must be debating battle or retreat." Hector complied, held up his staff and swore. "May Zeus in thunder, consort of Hera, witness this. No other Trojan rides that car behind that team. I say that you will do so. It is to be your glory." So he swore an oath to incite the man, and swore in vain. At once the runner slung his curving bow over his shoulder, and for cloak the skin of a grey wolf. He took a cap of weasel, picked up a javelin, and headed down for the line of ships, leaving the Trojan camp. But he would not return with news for Hector. When he had left the troops and tethered horses, trotting eagerly on the seaward path, Odysseus caught sight of the man coming, and whispered to Diomedes, "Who is this now headed towards us from the camp? A scout on night patrol along the ships, or bent on rifling some dead body, I can't say. Let him just pass into open ground a little, and we can catch him from behind. If he outruns us, once we are in between him and his base, attack with a spear throw, force him on the ships, not to let him cut back to the town." The two conversed in whispers, then lay still, flattened among dead bodies off the path, while the unwary man came running by. But when he had passed them 50 yards or so, a field's width, say, a team of mules could plough, being faster at this work than oxen, dragging a bolted ploughshare in a furrow. Both ran after him, and at the sound of feet he stood stock still, for in his heart he hoped that at a nod from Hector fellow Trojans were on their way to fetch him back. Now only a spear throw distant from him, maybe less, he recognized the Achaean enemies, and took to his heels. The two veered after him, as when 2 hounds well trained in tricks of game hang on behind a young buck or a hare through wooded land, and the quarry races on, emitting shrieks of dread. So Diomedes and Odysseus, raider of cities, chased their man after they cut him off from his own army. Seaward he fled, and now when he seemed headed straight into the sentry's arms, Athena set Diomedes raging not to give some other lucky Achaean the first shot by being slow to catch up. Poising his lance, Diomedes managed a great burst of speed, and called out, "Halt, or else my spear goes through you. Plunging death is coming at my hands. You cannot get away." In fact, he threw, but missed deliberately. The spear had passed above the man's right shoulder and stuck fast before him in the ground. In panic fear, the runner tripped and stopped. A chattering noise came from his mouth, and he turned faint and pale. The 2 men, panting, soon came up with him to pin his arms, but now in tears he begged them, "Take me alive, I can arrange a ransom. Iron and bronze and gold I have at home, and father will not count the cost if only he knows me safe amid the Achaean ships." The shrewd captain Odysseus answered him, "Courage. You need not feel your death so near. Tell me this, though, and plainly. What has brought you out of your camp and this way toward the ships, alone by night, when others take their rest? Would you despoil some corpse among the dead? Or were you sent by Hector to find out our dispositions at the ships? Or did you wish to find out yourself?" Dolan replied, his legs shaking under him. "Carried away I was, against my own good sense, by Hector. He said Achilles' team would be my prize, his chariot too, all trimmed with bronze. He told me to go through the black night now swiftly passing, and to approach our enemies, to learn if guards are posted at the ships as usual, or if the Achaeans, punished at our hands, are in accord to sail, and being far gone in weariness, have no will for a night watch." At this the great tactician smiled. He said, "By heaven, quite a reward was in your grasp. The car and horses owned by the great fighter, Aeacus' grandson. That is a fractious team for mortal men to muster. Not for Achilles, but he was born of an immortal mother. Tell me this now, give me a plain answer. Where is Hector. Where did you leave him when you took this path? His arms, where are they lying? Where are his horses? How have the other Trojans planned their watches and hours for sleep? Dolan again made answer. Hector is with his staff holding a council beside the funeral mound of the patriarch Ilus, far from the battlefield. No watches, in your sense, sir, are being stood, no sentries chosen to guard the camp. At every fire the necessary number are awake, and keep one another vigilant. Detachments of allies, though, are everywhere asleep, and leave the sentry duty to the Trojans. Allies have no families near at hand. The great tactician Odysseus said to him, And how are they encamped? Mixed in with Trojans or separately? Tell me about each one. I must know this. Dolan replied, I'll tell you. Nearest the sea are Carians and Peonies, with Leleges, Caucanes, and Pelasgians. Up the Scamander are the Lycians, Mysians, Phrygian horsemen, and Meonians. But why do you question me on these details? If you are bent on raiding a Trojan company, yonder are Thracians just arrived, far out on the left wing, apart from everyone. Their king is Rhesus Ionides. His horse is the most royal I have seen, whiter than snow and swift as the sea wind. His chariot is a masterwork in gold and silver, and the armour, huge and golden, brought by him here is marvellous to see, like no war gear of men but of immortals. You'll take me to the ships now, will you not? Or will you leave me here, bound hand and foot, while you go forward, testing what I have told you for accuracy and advantage to yourselves? Diomedes frowned and looked at him and said, As I see it, you need not hold this thought of slipping through our hands now you are in them, accurate though your facts may be. Suppose we let you go, or let you go for ransom. Later, by God, you'll come down on the ships to spy again, or to make open war. Resign your life now at my hands. You make no further trouble for the Argives. Even as he spoke, the man leaned forward, reaching to touch his chin, beseeching. But he brought his sword blade in a flash down on the nape, and severed the two tendons. In the dust, the head of the still-crying man was muffled. Now they pulled off his cap of weasel skin, his grey wolf jacket, javelin and bow, and Lord Odysseus held these trophies high to Athena, hope of soldiers. He appealed to her. Joy in this armour, goddess, first on Olympus, first of immortals in our invocation. Give us more luck. Send us against that Thracian bivouac and horses. And at this, he rid himself of Dolan's gear by lifting it into a tamarisk tree. He bundled it and made it easier to see by breaking tamarisk shoots and twigs from underneath, so he and Diomedes could not miss it on their way back in the night, now swiftly passing. Onward they pressed now, braving spears and blood, and came soon to the bivouac of Thracians at the camp's edge. Here weary troops were sleeping. Armour beside them canted on the ground in 3 well-ordered rows. The chariot teams were tethered, each one near the charioteer, and in the centre Rhesus slept. Beside him snowy horses were tethered by the reins that ran from the chariot rail. Odysseus first distinguished him and whispered, pointing him out to Diomedes, There is the man. There are the horses Dolan whom we killed described. Come, put your back in it, your heart. Why stand here in arms for nothing? Go, untie the horses, or let me do it while you kill the men. Grey-eyed Athena filled Diomedes' heart with fury. Whirling left and right he struck, and pitiable sounds came from the bodies cleft by the sword's edge. Earth ran red with blood. As on a flock of goats or sheep, unshepherded and undefended, a baleful lion falls, the son of Tydeus fell upon those Thracians until he had killed 12. And at his shoulder, Odysseus, adept at war, moved up to drag out by the heels each man he killed, thinking by this to save the beautiful horses from shying at the bodies when they passed, being unused to dead men yet. At last, when Diomedes reached the Thracian king, he took a 13th precious life away as the man gasped in sleep, nightmare upon him. Meanwhile, patient Odysseus freed the horses, hitching them together by the reins, and drove them off. He used his bow to whack them, missing the whip fixed in the painted chariot ready to his hand. With a low whistle, he made Diomedes look, but Diomedes waited, pondering what next to try in the way of outrage. Would he lift the pole and pilfer the king's chariot with his weapons, or take the life of still more Thracian men? His heart distended at the thought, when near him, out of the night air turning, Athena stood and said, No, put your mind on getting back to your own camp, son of great-hearted Tydeus, unless you choose to run for it, supposing some other god may wake the Trojans now. Diomedes respected the goddess's voice, and turned to mount the chariot. Odysseus used his bow for whip, and off they went to the ships of the Achaeans. No blind watch was kept by Apollo of the silver bow, who saw Athena following Diomedes. Irritated by her, he joined a company of Trojans and aroused Hippocoon, a noble cousin of Rhesus. Out of sleep, the man awoke and saw the empty ground where once fast teams had stood. He saw the soldiers massacred and soaking in their blood, and cried aloud at this, calling his friends. Soon there were other cries, and a wild din of troops who ran up, staring at the horrors done in that sortie from the ships. Now those who did that work had reached, on their return, the spot where they had killed Hector's observer. Noble Odysseus here reined in the team, while Diomedes vaulted down to sweep the bloody trophies into Odysseus's hands, and then remounted, and he whipped the horses into a willing run. Of all Achaeans, Nestor first heard the beat of distant hooves, and said, "Friends, lords and captains of the Argives, do I imagine it, or is it real? A drumming of distant hooves is in my ears. May it turn out already to be Odysseus and rugged Diomedes back again, with no time lost and driving Trojan horses? I have been fearful that they might be hurt in the Trojan outcry." He had not yet finished all he was going to say, when up they came, and set foot on the quiet ground. Their friends with warm hand-grips and greeting gave them welcome. Nestor, lord of Gerenia, put the question, "Tell me, Odysseus, great in all men's eyes, how did you take these horses? How slip by into the Trojan camp? Or did some god come down to meet you and bestow them on you, horses like the white flames of the sun? I join the fighting every day with Trojans, never, I think, malingering at the ships, old soldier that I am, but teams like these I never saw or heard of. Well, some god who crossed your path bestowed them, I suppose. I know both men are dear to the cloud-herder Zeus and to his daughter, grey-eyed Athena." Odysseus, the resourceful man, replied, "O Nestor, son of Neleus, light of Achaeans, a god might easily give still better horses, gods being so much stronger than ourselves. But these you ask about were new arrivals, Thracians, Excellency. Diomedes killed their master and a dozen fellow officers. A 13th man, a scout, abaft the ships, we executed. Hector and his peers had sent him forward to observe the army." Down through the moat he drove the horses now, and laughed a rumbling laugh. Along with him the others crossed, exulting. When they reached Diomedes' quarters, they tied up the horses by their own well-cut reins before the trough where the master's chariot horses fed on grain. Astern upon his ship, Odysseus hung the blood-stained gear of Dolan, pending a proper offering to Athena. Wading into the sea, the men themselves splashed at their coats of sweat, shins, nape, and thighs, until the surf had washed it from their skin, and they were cool again. Then out they came to take warm baths in polished tubs. Being bathed and rubbed with oil, the two sat down to take refreshment. From a full wine bowl, they dipped sweet wine and poured it to Athena.